We're about to now go into the glory days of content, where a lot of people that didn't have a voice in content or didn't have the confidence can now go into Google Bard or ChatGPT, put together a content strategy, try it. It may not be as good as one of ours as an agency, but it's going to get you going. You can literally write stuff and have AI read it out. And as sure as night follows day, in the coming years, we're going to have 100% AI hosted podcasts.
How do you see like the sort of average business owner who maybe isn't using AI that much at the moment? How do you see them using it to create their content?
The average business owner being somebody that doesn't make enough content is now just void of excuses.
Ultimately, to grow your personal and professional brand, you've got to go through those 4 Ps when it comes to content.
Yeah, and here's universal truth. Like, every entrepreneur is a content creator.
What's the next iteration when it comes to live face-to-face events in the face of content creation changing?
I think that because live events and in-person events are so coded and part of the human experience, they're never going to go away. I was being pitched metaverse solutions, virtual conferences and events by Terrapin in 2006, 2007.
Hey guys, welcome to the Ultimate Marketing Podcast with myself, Vish, and my 2 co-hosts. We have the lovely Danita, who is our LinkedIn queen, and Sarah Cox, our automation queen. And we have got a very special guest with us on today's podcast. And I'm going to be giving you some more information about him and introducing him in a few moments' time. Before we get into all of that, remember you can like, comment, share, subscribe. We want to hear from you. So before we get any further, find that button around here. We're in all the podcast platforms, on YouTube, etc., etc. So hit those subscribe buttons, hit those like buttons, and let us know where you're listening in from. Right, so bringing us on to our very special guest today. We're very privileged to have not only somebody who I consider to be a very, close personal friend of mine, but someone who's like my spirit brother, someone who I've known for many, many years and who's had a great journey and rise to what he's doing right now. But his name is Raj Kotecha. He is the founder of the Creative Content Agency, and he's a creator of the 4-piece content workshop, which I'm going to ask you some questions on a little bit later on. But he's created some amazing brands around the world, 2 of which are personal favorites of mine. One is Vaynerworld. He was the person that brought Gary V to the UK and did both his book launches, not just 1, but 2 book launches in the UK, and also created an international brand, not just a brand based out in Dubai or London, but an international brand called My Friends, Your Friends. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Raj onto our podcast. Raj, how you doing? Yeah, give him a drum roll, guys. Come on.
I'm doing.
That's our version of our drum roll.
Yeah. Thank you for the intro. Yeah, I'm doing super well. Thanks. It's really nice to be on here, and I'm so glad that we get a bit of time together. So yeah, looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, so I saw you a couple of weeks ago. My Friends, Your Friends touchdown in the UK. I think for a lot of people, it was their first My Friends, Your Friends experience in the UK. But I remember years ago when you had like the foundations of the My Friends, Your Friends in King's Cross. I forgot the bar that we were at, but that kind of almost kickstarted that part of the journey off. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, we started off at Camino. When I was, right now I live in Dubai. I've lived here coming up to 7 years full time. But prior to those 7 years, I used to live half in London, half in Dubai. And what would happen is I would go back to London, and because I have roots in a couple of different industries, media, entertainment, music, technology, this kind of brand building stuff, it got to the stage whereby these trips back to the UK were becoming more and more compressed and a bit more pressure on my time. Truthfully, I just wanted to see my family a bit more and loved ones and spend more time with my mum and dad. So it got to the stage where, Facebook was huge at the time. The following was pretty decent on there. I said, listen, if you want to meet me, come meet me here. I'll bring my friends. And typically a lot of my friends wanted to meet some of my other friends. So originally it was called My Friends, Their Friends. We did it at Camino. I think about 80 or so people showed up. And then we did it again. And I realized, I was like, hang on a second, like if this many people show up to hang out with me in a bar, what if I wasn't the host, and what if we had other co-hosts? So I let somebody borrow the concept and she was using it in Dubai. She did one event and she changed the name to My Friends, Your Friends. And when I told people that she's changed the name to My Friends, Your Friends, they were like, I like that more. And because she didn't want to continue with it, I said, hey, do you mind if I take it back? She goes, of course, it's your concept, just take the spruced up name. So I took it back with an upgraded name. And back in 2017, March, we got 15 people in a bar in Dubai in the financial center. And they brought their friends along. That again, 80, 85 people, maybe 95 came in total. We did it again in a different bar with different friends, different bar with different friends. Each of these 15 people were co-hosts that we selected. We don't really mind whether you're royalty or whether you rescue animals. Your background is not the variable. We just look for good people. And then we brought people from different communities together. Jump forward to our 10th event. We were in the Burj Khalifa, over 500 people in one of their biggest
Oh my
spaces
gosh,
out there.
amazing.
And then we were up to 16 in May here in Dubai. And then I hit the road for the summer, which is what I used to do before pre-COVID, and went to Toronto, rolled out there. Interesting story. Went to New York City, rolled out there in Wall Street. Interesting story. And then came to London and did it at the Gherkin building where Vish and I both used to DJ separately, but that's kind of like an iconic place for both of us. And so now, by numbers, we're approaching our 20th event here in Dubai, which I'm currently working on. And we're 5,500 people, 4,000 in Dubai, another 1,500 worldwide. And it's been a real honor and a privilege to be responsible for connecting so many people, because when we do ask people, why do you come? They've all got a story, and it's around meeting somebody that gave them some really great travel advice that they were able to use when they went overseas, or they met an investor or a partner. Of course, we don't put it out there as a kind of dating or biz dev thing, but business does happen. People do tend to meet in these kind of scenarios, especially in a young metropolitan city like Dubai, where 90% of people have come from out of town. So yeah, it's been one of the greatest privileges to build that brand, and it also has taught me a lot as well as a brand builder. As Vish mentioned, we've had other brands in the past, Vayner and things like that, but My Friends Your Friends is probably the first maybe second brand that's like surpassed my personal brand, because my personal brand is the thing that drives a lot of the growth across everything that we do. And My Friends Your Friends is crazy, because people are going to the event, they have no idea who I am, they're shocked to meet me, and it's just like, it's nice, it's nice it feels like a graduation moment where you've actually built something that's bigger than you, or just doesn't rely on you being there.
I was just going to ask actually, because obviously Vish knows you really well. So, we've gone straight into the My Friends, Your Friends element. Can you give us a little bit of a backstory about your journey and how you kind of got to where you are today? Because like you said, you live in Dubai right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, just a bit of a back journey on how you created the agency. How did you get to where you are today?
So my story is fairly typical, like, Gujarati kid born in 1980. Now, versus where the majority of the population is in the UK, like Leicester, London, Birmingham, places like that. I grew up in Salford in Manchester on the west. And in the 80s and 90s, it was very tough. A lot of talking with your hands, if you know what I mean. And my dad had a shop, and we had times where times were good, and we had a lot longer times where times were not so good. So, growing up, 7 of us in a 2-bedroom place above a shop. I would sleep in the living room. We had plastic on the windows to keep the cold out. And it was just a hard life. Like, I woke up to the sound of the bell when the door opens, or the buzzer when the door opens. So I think at that formative time, straight into my DNA just went business. I had no front door. Like, to leave the house, I had to go downstairs into the living room, walk through the storeroom, through the aisles of the shop, and exit out of the shop door. That was my front door. So it was more than religion. It was part of the fabric of what made our family up. 18 years old, went to university. It was the first year that they started fees. 1998. It was £1,000, which £1,000 today almost feels like a free education. But when you go when you go from 0 to 1,000, that was quite a leap. And so that was the conversation that everybody was having in Freshers Week, which is like, have you got a loan to pay for your £1,000 and so on? At the same time, whilst growing up in my dad's shop and helping out and learning the ropes around business and tax and things of that nature, the radio was always on. And as you know, Manchester in the 80s, 90s, and even today, was one of the premier music cities in the world. We had hardcore house music, happy hardcore house. We had rock and roll, Oasis. Going back to the 80s, we had a major love for hip hop, because there's a real street culture in Manchester. That's real life over there. So so when I went to university, I got a flyer and I was like, I know I'm going to go to as many parties as I can, because I basically memorized every song I ever learned, you know, filling the shelves in my dad's shop. And literally, I would say within 2 weeks of the time we're recording this right now, September, I saw a flyer. I went out to talk to some promoters outside my Freshers Week building. I said, how can I get in for free? Because I knew that my addiction would ultimately be expensive to music. They said, if you sell tickets, we can get you free tickets. So 1998, September 1998, 25 years ago this month, I took a batch of tickets, started selling them. Now, Manchester's a tricky place to do your own parties. If you're making money, especially if you're making money in and around the streets, that doesn't always get you like good favor with people. So a year later, after much persuasion, we started doing our own parties. We negotiated what we need to negotiate with the people on the ground there to make sure that we could do it and everything would be okay. And you know, first event that we did, we booked a guy called MC Neat. So we had a record, DJ Luck and MC Neat. A little bit of luck ended up becoming this like big seminal UK garage record. When garage music started to calm down and the DJs that we worked with carried on with their medical degrees, we started Love Soul. And for many years, on a Sunday night, we had a night called SOS, Soul on Sundays, where we would have a bunch of DJs and a bunch of artists that would perform. Did my undergrad there, finished that, did my postgrad in technology management, acquisition and strategy, went to Canada, managed to win a sales competition that got me some time with the CEO of a telecoms network. As a result of that, he asked me what opportunity I would want, and I said I'd like to start a ringtones portal. So I started the first independent ringtones portal in Canada, doing deals.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this 2003, 2004 when Crazy Frog was a thing.
Yeah.
Going back and forth.
I remember
It's a big
that.
time, right? And a lot of revenue being made at that time as well. So I'd go down to Miami, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, New York City, and different places, just working with the music industry to try and get deals to get this content licensed and brought up to Canada. At the time, it would be like Black Eyed Peas and 50 Cent and all that kind of stuff. And then once my visa ran out in Canada, I had a really good, you know, ability to talk the mobile industry. I'd done a TV campaign for Sony Ericsson, a nationwide TV campaign, and came back to the UK, was working with tech companies in the mobile space, people like Dynamo as well, to get their clips on phones. This was pre-iPhone, so you know, it was all on Sony Ericssons and Nokias and Blackberries at that time. Yeah. And then along comes the iPhone, and I left that company and went to work for a publisher in Los Angeles. And I joined that company in 2007, and 2008 we got bought by The Guardian for millions of dollars. And it turns out that as employee number 6, I had share options. And I was still very hood at this time. I didn't really know what share options were, but I got a phone call overnight saying that the company will be acquired. The announcement will go out in the morning, so we need your share options. I sent them my share options, finding them in a cupboard in Kenton. I was living in half a living room on a single bed, and next thing you know, I got a payout. It wasn't like enough to make me super rich, but it certainly like extinguished any of my debts, gave me a bit of clarity to think. And by this point, Love Soul had already been in London. So if we just zoom back a few years, we'd come to London, done the Russell Peters after party as a result of my relationships in Canada. We converted Love Soul into creative content agency. I went all in on the agency, started working with some incredible e-commerce brands, Golf Online, Carrier Bag Shop. And then 2013, got asked to come here to UAE and moderate a panel with YouTube on the panel, and Huda Beauty, Huda Katan, and Sephora, the retailer. As I was coming off stage, I was approached by so many people. They gave me their business cards, and I was like, hey, I could really do something in Dubai. And I was extremely lucky that my sister already came out here in 2009, 2010. So I had a floor to sleep on and a mattress, and I was really good to go. And it was a big decision because I was living a great life, like in Hatchen, nice house, nice car, amazing, you know, going on a bunch of incredible like dates and just living that young boy's life. And I moved out to Dubai, maybe came back a few steps. And then eventually just started working with clients out here. And again, Vish is so critical to this journey because one day on Facebook, an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur here in Dubai called Spencer Lodge, said, I need someone to help me with my content.
Oh, we love Spencer.
Yeah.
He's a really good friend of mine as well. He's fabulous.
He's an
guy.
icon in this city. And Vishal was very generous to tag me. I met Spencer for a drink, decided to go back into the agency world and represent Spencer and do a bunch of content with him. He's, you know, fast forward, he's now the #1 English-speaking podcast in the UAE. Yeah, done stuff with Tony Robbins, Steven Bartlett, a bunch of other people. We've supported him on some of those projects. Neil Patel. In fact, the Neil Patel one was interesting. It was Spencer was no longer a client of ours, but still part of our like alumni. and we really wanted to program his 100th episode of his podcast. So I kicked Spencer out of his studio, and I got Neil Patel, the digital marketer, on Zoom, and then we covered the laptop. And then when Spencer came in for episode 100, I lifted up the fabric, and Neil was there, and Spencer just lost his mind. And as a professional, he knew everything. Yeah, he knew everything about Neil, and did a kick-ass podcast. So yeah, along that time, we came up with My Friends, Your Friends, as I explained. We've created several podcasts. Myself and Fat Man Scoop, 2 times Grammy Award winner, had a show called Other People's Podcasts. So we reviewed other people's podcasts. Over COVID, we launched the Sugar Hill Gang podcast. We had Jazzy Jeff and Talib Kweli and a bunch of other people on there. We worked with Daz FX, one of the members, to produce the Producers podcast with Ninth Wonder from Jay-Z's team. We did 100 episodes of another podcast for Fat Man Scoop called Make Noise. We had Snoop on there, DMX, rest in peace, and a bunch of different people. And yeah, man, it's been an incredibly good adventure, and not least because of folks like Vish just randomly reaching out and connecting me to people. That's happened so many times with so many people that if you compound it, you end up with the situation we're in right now.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? The beauty of it is connections, and that's how all of this happens, because you just never know where one particular step or introduction is going to take you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way I met Vish was so genuine as well, because we were both on the scene, but because he skewed more towards Indian music and we skewed more towards hip hop, we would never typically be booked on the same gig. But what happened was we were going to perform New Year's Eve at the Gherkin, and one of our biggest opportunities to promote that was at a music night where there was a lot of Indian music, and everyone was like, Crash is coming. Like every DJ, every person in the room was like waiting for his headline set. He wasn't there at the beginning of the night. The warm-up DJs were there, and he walked in. We'd just done our promo. I think even when they were changing turntables or changing, DJs, we went up and said, hey, listen, if you're in this venue, we'll be here on New Year's Eve. And obviously Vish started DJing right afterwards, and I don't like Indian music at all. But when I saw this guy DJ, I was like, wow. I was like, it doesn't matter what this guy's DJing. He's just technically so proficient that it was just a wonder to watch. And I think immediately, just off respect, I was like, although it's not my music, you can't do that unless you know what you're doing. And we had an instant connection. Then he came in and did content for not My Friends, Your Friends, did content for Vayner 2, I think, for the Jab Right Hook launch. No, Ask Gary V show. And he DJ'd my sister's wedding. So yes, it's really good. It's anytime I can do something for you and for you guys, I'm always down.
No, bro, appreciate that. I actually met you, but I didn't come up to you because I was so in awe. And it's a similar story, bro. But you guys were doing Penthouse in Leicester Square, and
With
I think
Russell.
that might have been the Russell.
Yeah.
That was a Russell party,
Yeah.
because I was DJing upstairs, and as I finished my set, I was coming down because the stairs, like the lifts, were just busy. So I'm gonna take the stairs down. And as I came down, I saw your floor was absolutely rammed. And I just saw Russell, because obviously Russell's a big dude, right? Mm-hmm. So I saw him standing there, and he's holding the mic in his hand, and you and Vic were DJing next to him. And so I literally popped my head in, and I don't know what I said to the person at the door. I was like, do you mind if I just finished my set? Do you mind if I stand? They're like, yeah, sure, like whatever. Because it's just me by myself. Bro, I stood there for 45 minutes, literally in awe. And I just didn't have the balls to come up to you and go, hey man, this is who I am, like whatever. Even though you can say, oh, DJ Crash, whatever. Like that's all, like, I was like, wow, this is freaking awesome. And then just to know that you guys were also there at the party a couple of years later is really humbling.
Oh, that's crazy. But I wish we'd met that night, man. That would have been the best.
Yeah, I wish we'd met that night, bro. We would have been like in, different, like, it would have been more time with you, bro. But it is what it is.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah,
everything happens for a reason, as they say.
So look, you moved out to Dubai. Like, the creative content agency has gone from like strength to strength, but you came up with something around kind of content, because you guys specialize in helping entrepreneurs, brands build their content out, right?
Yeah.
And you came up with a 4Ps. Can you take us like through what that's all about? Like, what's your message around content? Because we can then kind of come back into marketing. There's a couple of questions I wanted to ask you, and then hand over to our co-hosts as well, right?
Yeah. So the 4Ps is as a result of me being a small business owner, working on a bunch of different brands. And obviously when you're your own business and you're your own business owner, you've got to do a lot of the grunt work yourself. One of my grunt work tasks was writing my own website, writing the copy for my own website. So as I'm writing down all of my case studies, these trends emerged, which is like, hang on a second, in every single one of these campaigns, whether we're doing e-commerce or celebrity or music or anything like that, we're involved in the planning, the production, the publishing and the promotion. And obviously when alliteration like that lines up, you're like, hang on a second, if all of these things begin with a P, these are effectively the 4 Ps of content. And once I started to talk to clients and talk to future clients about it, I found that it was so incredibly like penetrative in terms of the way it gets into their mind that I just coined the phrase the 4 Ps of content. And it's great because it's also so logical. It's actually flawless, and it's probably one, outside my friends, your friends, it's probably one of the biggest things that's I've been fortunate enough to fall into my head. But it's like you have to plan something before you produce it. Only once it's produced can it be published somewhere, and only once you published it somewhere can you promote to it. So whether you're talking about Vincent van Gogh doing a painting, has to be planned in his head before he produces it with a paintbrush. Then it has to be published on the wall of a gallery, and then it has to be promoted. The gallery has to be promoted. But the wall location inside the gallery is now a URL. So even if you're making content for YouTube, you have to plan the YouTube video before you publish it on YouTube, or well, you have to plan it before you produce it. Once it's produced and rendered on your laptop, you have to publish it to YouTube, and then that URL is the thing that you're promoting, whether you're using attractive thumbnails or you're sending direct links. So it's flawless for me. It's the Porter's 5 forces of content, and I hope it just lives on, like my friends, your friends. I just hope it lives on, way after me. And this summer, I've been able to address a lot of things that I really wanted to address. In and around merchandise. So now, like, I wear my own clothes, my friends, your friends' clothing. We have our own, 4Ps mugs and stuff like that. And we're going to invest more in it. But I just couldn't do it before because we were just so busy and recovering from COVID, because that had a big impact on the business. But now, I just need to check here. But yeah, so our brands are like my personal brand, my friends, your friends, creative content agency, Algo, which is our podcast, the 4Ps of content, and contentstrategy.ai. That's our new learning and development offering, which is doing super well, where we're focusing on the intersection of content strategy and how AI tools are amplifying that. So we believe that AI is the biggest shift in content creation since the mobile phone, for anybody who's just listening on audio. And whereas this closed up the hardware gap for a lot of people, AI is closing up the intelligence gap in terms of writing captions, doing research, things of that nature. So I think we're about to now go into the glory days of content. We're about to go into the real moment where a lot of people that didn't have a voice in content or didn't have the confidence can now go into Google Bard or Chat GPT, put together a content strategy, try it. It may not be as good as one of ours as an agency, but it's going to get you going. And it literally will give voice to the voiceless. Like if you use Google text to speech and you were unfortunately not born with a voice, or you've lost your voice over the course of your life, you can literally write stuff and have AI read it out. And as sure as night follows day, in the coming years, we're going to have 100% AI hosted podcasts based on the thoughts of somebody who doesn't have the privilege of a voice, or maybe they have a voice, but they're in Rwanda and they speak Swahili, but they want to put out an English podcast, and they'll be able to do that. And that's where the future's going. So we believe that's
Well, there's
exciting.
already video AI, isn't there, around that, Raj, in terms of, it's not, it needs evolving, but there is what, there's ones, I can't, is it, starts with D and I can't remember what it's called.
Descript.
Descript, where it takes out the ums and the ahs, or you can remove the ums and the ahs from it and things like that. But there's already that evolving kind of revolving door, isn't there?
So it's two things, right? To your point, because you just made an extremely valid point there about evolving and evolution. And the real question is, what you kind of need to kind of like price up in your mind is that is AI an evolution or a revolution? And you have to understand both cases, right? The case for evolution is that humans have always codependently with each other searched for and synthesized information and knowledge. And AI is an evolution of that because it helps accelerate it. But for the first time ever, we're seeing a revolution because AI is also a new independent force that can synthesize information and knowledge independent of human beings. So you've now got this thing that works with human beings, but you can also set it a task and it'll just get on with it. And we've not seen that for a while. In fact, we've never seen that. So it's a big shift. It's very exciting, and I think it's going to generate a lot of money for people.
I say, how do you see like the sort of average business owner who maybe isn't using AI that much at the moment? How do you see them using it to create their content? What do you see happening?
The average business owner being somebody that doesn't make enough content is now just void of excuses, because they can't just say that they can't come up with the ideas, because You can work with ChatGPT or Bard to come up with a content strategy. Again, it might not be as tailored as if you work with someone like us that's got as much experience, but soon that gap will close. So firstly, your ideas are there. So now you can use it to plan your content. Now, if you're not particularly good with graphics or editing video, you can use Descript, as Denita mentioned, to edit your content. So now it's planning and producing. Now you can use AI as well to help you publish the content and write your descriptions. And then you can use AI to promote your content and give you ideas as to how you can get that content onto the phones of people that want to watch it. So AI is actually affecting the full 4Ps of content. And the 4Ps of content is all of content. Because whether you're talking about thumbnails or metadata or podcast feeds or video or audio or the metaverse, everything, if you distill it down, will ultimately fall into one of 4 buckets: plan, produce, publish, promote. AI is going to accelerate that, and it's going to empower so many people that previously did not have time to put content out. I'll be brutally honest here. We've got clients that at the moment are paying us, and they're paying us based on a rate of how much work it requires us to put in to produce their content for them, whilst in the background, our input has gone down by 70%. Now, we're not at a place right now where we can long-term pass those cost savings on to our customers, because AI is young and we're still trying to figure it out. And it still requires a lot of human quality assurance and diligence by us before we hand it over to a publicly listed company. But soon we're going to be passing those savings on, because of the 4Ps: plan, produce, publish, promote. Produce is under major threat. We've just gone from, I think we're all in the same age bracket. We all remember putting film into cameras. Going to the store to buy film and develop it was expensive. Now it's all recorded on a memory card or even on your phone where there's no memory card. So producers had the hardware pressure knocking the price down. Now you've got AI bringing the intelligence pressure knocking the price down. So now there's effectively going to be no excuses to not make content. And what we're now going to start to see is there's going to be less and less brands that will genuinely be able to survive without making content. Many of them can today. Many of them can. But we're going to see that number compress.
I think many of them are getting away with it. I think that's the key, isn't it? They're getting away with surviving with that content. Content, as somebody who manages LinkedIn and helps clients with their LinkedIn, content is such a big element of that platform working for you. And, from a lead generation point of view, from a personal branding point of view. So I think you're right. I think, it gets rid of the excuses more than anything else, because I think a lot of people still get away, especially if they've got a good brand name already, or they've been out there using some of the more traditional methods, and content creation online specifically hasn't been their number one, go-to. I think that the excuse will go away, because I do believe that, they say content is king, but I think there's more to it than that. I think content is a part of is an essential ingredient to your whole marketing sphere. And it actually fits into those 4Ps really well as well. Because like you said, whether you're doing a YouTube video, whether you're doing a podcast, whether you're writing something, ultimately to grow your personal and professional brand, you've got to go through those 4Ps when it comes to content.
Yeah. And here's a universal truth. Like, every entrepreneur is a content creator. Whether you're putting together your profit and loss accounts, or whether you're one of those entrepreneurs that's kind of orientates towards marketing and puts all of the content out, or you're a personal brand or a freelancer, there is no entrepreneur on the planet today that can do what they need to do in terms of finding success without creating some content along the way. Even companies that work in the most discreet fashion, people that are in the arms business that supply missiles and weaponry to governments, are still producing some content along the way, even if that content is the contract that your customer signs to put your order in. Content is a dependent variable. It's a necessity, and every entrepreneur is a content creator. And I think the sooner that people start to realize that, especially in a world where the cost of producing content is going down and the excuses are melting away, the faster the entrepreneurs clock onto that, the sooner they can start taking advantage before the next shift, whatever that is.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of different. I mean, it's going to expand that differential, right? The people will notice that the success is directly related to how much content they produce and how much is publicly accessible. So not just contracts and admin level content, but also publicly accessible, outreach content. Question I have for you, bros, with all this change happening, and it is a big change, and I think it's happening in different pockets of the world, and it's kind of filtering out slowly. Dubai being a hub, America being a hub, and UK, I think, is lagging behind. But there are some standout people in the UK that are doing it really well. But it's still playing catch up with a lot of people. Is this, bro, from a content creation perspective? People will start naturally creating more content. Because obviously we're both, well, actually all four of us are from an events background, right? Conferences, live events, face to face. How's that going to take? Is that going to take a knock? Is it going to evolve? And what's the next iteration when it comes to live face to face events in the face of content creation changing?
I think that because live events and in-person events are so coded and part of the human experience, they're never going to go away. I was being pitched metaverse solutions, virtual conferences and
Yeah.
events by Terrapin or by an ex-Terrapin guy in
Right.
2006, 2007. And they were like, listen, there'll be this world, your little like Lego man will move around and there'll be little brands inside there that you can interact with. Yet and
Yeah.
still, even after the last 2 years, 3 years that we've had, people are itching to get back together. So what's going to happen is live and whatever the latest version of like metaverse connection is or online connection is will just
Yeah.
continue to coexist. The thing is, there's not that much evolution required for a live and in-person event. You know, whether I put 500 people into a WeWork to see Gary Vaynerchuk speak and ask him questions, or whether I put 500 people into the Burj Khalifa with no agenda, just walk in, grab your free drink, and make some friends. The fundamental chemistry of having people in close proximity together doesn't require that much adaptation. And the only thing to stop it was 2020, where people said you can't physically be in close proximity to each other. But now that we've seen that, you know, adjust and society adjust around what's acceptable there, and people are very much back together again, it's incredible how it just reformed and clicked right back into a 2019 world. So I think they'll just continue to coexist, because nobody can imagine, and I imagine nobody wants a world where there's no human connection. Now, if digital can come along and facilitate it and lubricate it, then that's incredible. But if not, then they'll just continue to coexist.
So will the digital be like a layer on top of that? So the way that I've seen, like in my head, like envisioning it, a live event, like say 10 years into the future when this technology becomes widely accessible, is like almost having a very personal experience based on what you want to see, hear, have live translations, live stuff being beamed into your glasses or your interface device. Like, do you see it happening as a layer on top of what's going on to enhance the experience, as opposed to kind of take away from it and go, actually, we don't want to do fake? Because you've already answered that for the second part of the question, but how do you see that layer being added on, bro?
So
Like that's a
I've
minority report.
Yeah, well, I've been following AI for quite some years, but obviously I
Yeah,
jumped in even more now because of the acceleration we've seen since ChatGPT 3.5 came out last year. One of the most impressive individuals I've met or had a conversation with so far in this space is a guy called Mustafa Suleiman. He is the founder of DeepMind, which is one of the original AI companies from over a decade ago. He started it in 2010, sold it to Google around 2013, 2014. He's also the latest guest on the last episode of Steven Bartlett's Diary of a CEO.
right.
I thought I'd heard that name actually.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you see on my Instagram, there's a picture of us, and we spent some time together. I had a brief chat at Collision Conference in Toronto, which is an incredible conference. And he's working on a technology within his company. That day that I spoke to him, they announced a $1.3 billion investment, and a lot of that energy is going to go towards a solution called Pi, which is like a personal assistant, personal artificial intelligence. Now, what Pi will do is it will give everybody an assistant that will interface with everybody else's assistant, including the assistants of brands. So now at the moment, you know how soul destroying it is if you wake up in
Yes.
the UK, which many people will do in the next 6 months, with a flu, and it's the middle of January, and you know that if you don't make that phone call at exactly 8 o'clock or 8:30,
Yeah.
that your local health center will not be able to book you in for an emergency appointment. Now you'll
Yeah.
just go to bed, tell your AI, I need this call made. Now at the moment, the version of this that we see, which tends to go viral, but is kind of temporary, is that you see videos online of an AI calling a human and booking them in at a restaurant. And then the story is AI booked me a table at this restaurant, and the human at the restaurant didn't even know that it was talking to an AI. That's temporary. What's going to happen is your AI is going to talk directly to their AI, maybe not even in English, maybe just through a digital API, and the booking will be made. The same way that as a human, we interface with an online form and we book ourselves into a restaurant, or the same way that we speak to another human and then they type it using their fingers into an online system, that will all be automated. Then AI will think outside the box and say, hey, listen, I know you said originally that you didn't want to go to Milan for this wedding, but actually, if you go, you can go to the wedding, and 48 hours later, the biggest conference in your industry is there. We know what your media credentials are. You can go to the event for free of charge, and the whole trip, including the wedding, will be a tax write-off based on the way that your company is registered in the UK. That's where we're going.
Yeah, 100%.
Incredible, isn't it?
So AI is a great little digression from where we were talking, like, and it's great because we can like go down this rabbit hole forever, right? Until stuff starts changing, we have to start at the top again. But coming back to like more of a marketing focus, right? What's the biggest trend change you've seen smaller businesses applying in what they do to create content and to get their brand out there, the recognition, etc., that they've learned from some of the bigger agencies or the bigger brands that are out there? Like what have the smaller fish essentially adopted that you can pass on to them as advice right now? Like what's working for these guys?
I think what the smaller people have seen is that because they've got accessibility to the same tools that Coca-Cola has, Pepsi has, Schweppes has, Colgate has, that they're effectively out of options. So I'll give you a real example. On the road that we grew up on in Manchester, in Salford, we had a shop, right? Just an Indian shop. Wasn't a corner shop, but the equivalent in the middle of the block, right? And when Londis and Tesco and QuickSave and Aldi moved in, we could not compete against them. We could not print the number of flyers that they are printing and dropping them into our customers' letterboxes. We did not have the ability to plan, produce, publish, and promote content and marketing to the same level as our competitors. Now we do. So I think what smaller companies have realized and what independent companies have realized and freelancers is that they now can compete. And when you look at privilege, you look at people that grew up with money, or you look at people that grew up with beauty, like natural beauty, you think, my goodness, that's a hell of a head start, right? The beauty that you're born with, if you're an exceptionally beautiful person, is free. If you're born into a family with money, or you've not earned the money, your access to the money is free. Your ability to spend the money is free. Well, everybody has that free launch pad, because if you can go on Instagram or TikTok and you can message brands that you want to work with, you can message customers that have expressed an interest in your products. Everybody has that free first step. Everybody right now, if you imagine a car's got 5 gears, everybody's starting on gear 1. And that's a revolution compared to 50 years ago where everybody started on 0. So I think that's what independent people are learning. And then also, this is what I'm seeing as well, and I've never said this before, but specifically looking at the next generation of people right now that are in their 20s, and you know who they are because you see them on YouTube and Instagram and on podcasts and all stuff like that. I think a lot more people as well, one of the biggest shifts has been confidence. A lot of people, especially women and women of color or people from like marginalized communities, are now coming out and making podcasts about harassment they might have faced or pressure they've been under. Maybe they've lost a baby, maybe they've gone through a divorce, maybe all these other bits and pieces. More so than business, Vish, I think the biggest thing right now is people having the confidence to put their voice out and seeing each other on camera and being like, hey, listen, I've suffered from a bereavement, or I've lost a business. And I think what we'll see is we'll see that trickle down into a change in culture in the UK, because the UK doesn't really encourage speaking out about things that are kind of like sad, or I've had plastic surgery, I've had this removed, I've got cellulite, whatever it may be. Now I think the fact that people are talking about this kind of stuff, it makes us a lot more like America, because America is very vocal about everything, including failing, whereas the UK tends to turn its nose up and look down and stuff like that. So I see that culture changing, and I'm extremely proud of like these young guys and girls that are in their 20s that are they're getting their billboards in Piccadilly Circus, and that's their podcast, and they're talking about all types of things that used to be taboo. These are not my direct children, but they're derivatives of stuff that I was doing, because I was on YouTube in 06, 07 making content at a time where, especially in my community, in the brown community, if you weren't going down go to the city of London and get a job, become a pharmacist, become a lawyer, I'm just like rolling around the city, partying, doing stuff with celebrities. Like it wasn't the done thing. And I'm so glad now that people are like basically crafting their own futures. And the idea of being 22 and by default going into the corporate world is no longer there. So I think that's really, really
Yeah.
incredible, is I'm seeing that empowerment with people. And, people that are, before they're 30, they're full-time podcasters. To me, that's a beautiful thing. Whether you're a podcaster or whether you design skateboard ramps, as long as you're doing something that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, people told you couldn't do and you've proved them wrong, I'm immensely proud of those people.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the change is already happening, because even when you look at in the UK, a lot of podcasts, a lot of YouTube channels, Instagram lives. I mean, the world of live has completely revolutionized so much as well. Just people talking about, and only one topic that I can specifically think of at the moment is the whole world of menopause. That's like massively taken over, because of the fact that now companies need to talk about it, bosses need to talk about it, but also individuals who have either gone through that experience and, like you said, they've got the confidence and the permission. They've given themselves the permission to talk about it, because they know that it is, like you said, it's a level playing field. Raj, I have a question for you. You've obviously been in Dubai. We've got marketing in the UK. What you said earlier about, and that's one of the things I love about the US, is just how more advanced or risk-free they are around their marketing. How is Dubai changing? What's a marketing landscape like in Dubai, and how has it been since when you moved there to now? What do you see? What changes do you see?
Yeah, Dubai is making great leaps forward when it comes to like tolerance and diversity in terms of like the way that the economy is set up here. Now, there are certain cultural norms and cultural parameters that allow us here in the UAE to benefit from no crime, that allow us to benefit from clean roads, that allow us to benefit from law and order. That these are trade-offs, but these trade-offs are absolutely
Yeah.
worth it. I mean, here we have a minister for AI. Like, there's an actual government minister whose only job it is to
Wow.
administer advances in AI. We have a minister for
Yeah.
tolerance, to make sure that people are tolerant of each other in a country where there's 190 odd different races and there's no arguments on the street. Like, there's no fighting, there's no nothing. There's
Yeah.
a whole month for Dubai, which is the Dubai Fitness Challenge, where for the whole month of November, the Crown Prince himself will shut down the highway and run with the people. And other than
Wow.
people maybe grabbing a selfie as they run past him, it's all peaceful. I've got to say
Yeah.
that the UAE is the greatest like social experience I've ever been part of. And I've spent a significant amount of time in New York, Los Angeles, Toronto, London, and other cities as well, just visiting, never mind like doing business. And the UAE is just incredible. I mean, I had my bag stolen in London, and there was a whole blackmail thing that happened. And I listened to Chris Voss, thankfully, many years ago, and I was able to use those techniques to get my bag back. But I'm literally
Yeah.
on the phone with the police for 20 minutes before they actually answer, 22 minutes on average to speak to a human. And then I have to tell them that under Section 18, you're allowed to go into this person's house to go and recover my laptop. Apple Find My is telling me the exact location. I have the person's name and phone number because they've blackmailed me and tried to call me. And I've got the recording of
Yeah.
the blackmail, and I'm sending it all over, and they're not even checking the emails. And it was, a very hairy situation. I lost my
Yeah.
passport, my debit card, my Emirates ID, everything. I came here to the
Yeah.
UAE. I went to a happiness center where I spoke to the lady at reception. She went and called an officer. The officer came over to me where I was sat down, said, "Okay, I heard you lost your documents, your national documents. I'm really sorry about this. We're going to help you." They offered me a tea and a coffee. They did a 24-hour process in 1 hour, and they apologized for being too
Yeah.
long. And then
Oh
they
my
used
gosh.
we used their printers and everything to print out all my documents. They sent me over to the next government department. Again, it was a 2-hour process. They knocked it out in an hour. I went to another emirate and back in 4 hours, and I had my national ID. And when I came back into the country, I didn't have my national ID. So I went through the scanner, and I went to the scanner with an immigration officer behind it, because I knew the scanner would reject me, and I'd have to walk to the immigration officer and say, "Hey, officer, I'm sorry, but I got robbed in London. I don't have any documents. All I've got is a passport. And even my new passport doesn't have my residence ID inside it." I went to the scanner, the biometric scanner. It scanned the retina of my eyes and said, "Raj Kotecha, welcome back." And just I walked in. This place is the future. Like, it's
Yeah.
heaven here. And I think if you look at the average story of the average like brown person in the UK, grandparents from India, parents did a generation in Africa. We were born and raised in the UK. I'd be very happy if I have kids, God willing, for them to be born here in the UAE. Like, this is that next shift. This is that big effort. I'm just going to move and try it. This is New York in the 80s. Do you know what I mean? It's incredible here. There's just no way that I'd be where I am without this platform. You know what I mean? It's just the platform being the country, and it just continues to get better and better. I mean, if you walk outside my house right now, you can literally cut the opportunity with a knife. It's like booming here. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, I get I'm romanticized by Dubai because, you know, going there in the mid to late 2000s, the amount of times I came back and forth, it was like going to Brighton for me on a weekend to DJ and come back, seeing the progression of the city and to what it was when I came back out in 2020 when you invited me out to DJ your sister's wedding, right? Then also, you know, having those face-to-face meetings with people on the ground out there, like I was like, this is the place to be. Unfortunately, lockdown came along and was like, no, you're not going anywhere, son. Sit back down and go back to London. But the opportunities are there. Like now, I think we have this conversation. Was it last year or the year before? Can't remember when it was. But the visa situation has changed as well, right? So now it's more open and accessible for people to come into Dubai. What have you seen in the last year that's changed the opportunities that are around there? Not just from a marketing perspective, but maybe just from a business and an interpersonal perspective. Like, what's changed? Like, how have people taken to that?
Well, you know, probably one of the biggest shifts from a business perspective here is international tax compliance. So a few years ago, VAT was launched, and that works very smoothly. Corporation tax came this June. That seems to be working fairly smoothly. What that's going to do is that's going to mean that the country is now going to, you know, independent business owners are going to be opening up their books. So there's going to be a lot more international compliance. So I think that's super exciting. With that will come, you know, taxable benefits and all of the stuff that we're used to in the UK when it comes to corporation tax and deductibles and things of that nature. So I think that's going to mean that we're going to go from a place that still has these very traditional, like, trading communities that trade gold and silver and jewelry and spices. And as the next generation of people take over, whether it be the children of these legacy entrepreneurs or whether it be people that buy their companies and take them over, we're going to end up with like a lot more international compliance. And what that's going to lead to is that's going to lead to a lot of staunch critics having to just shut up. Because what you're going to say, like, we, you know, over here in my business at the moment, I use a software called Xero, Xero. It's the same software you use in the software you use in the UK. When I open it and I generate an invoice, it has the same regulatory compliance as the UK tax system. So it's just going to, I think from that perspective, it's just getting really good. And another thing that you'll notice, and Vishen Lakhani, who I don't know personally, but he did a really interesting video on this a few months ago, which is that it's just like a yes city here. Like, and I'd say, I'll give you a direct quote. I was out for dinner with Gary Vaynerchuk, and I asked him, it's the first time he was here. I was like, what do you reckon? He goes, it's just a yes city. Like, I've got too much stuff in the way of my window at the moment, but there's a canal outside my living room here, which I can see, and there's yachts going by, and that canal was not there 10 years ago. You want a canal running through downtown and through Business Bay? Yes, it can be done. It just gets done. It's like they make promises and they deliver on it, which gives everybody a sense of confidence. You know, people are happy to go outside and do business and take risks because they know that the infrastructure that is the government is going to support them. So it's really, really good. If you come here, like, and especially, you know, not sound like a knob, but like if you know a guy like me or other people like that, we go out, we get coffee. I'll be like, okay, you should talk to this person, and that person will introduce you to somebody else. Then you might end up at a brunch on a Saturday with like 15 people that are in your space, and then 3 of them might say, come home for a barbecue, and then at that barbecue, you might meet somebody else. And it's not long before you start putting 2 and 2 together. I don't know a single entrepreneur that stuck this market out for 1 year and not found their feet. Because it is a seasonal place, right? It gets really hot in the summer. It gets really, you know, it's really pleasant in the winter. There are different moments, whether it's rugby or F1 or Soul DXB. There are different moments in the calendar which present different opportunities that bring different communities to the country, and it's just a wonderful place, man. I really do love it here.
That's awesome, bro. Hopefully, I get a chance to come out and see you again very soon.
Yeah,
bro.
I'd love that.
Yeah, bro, it'll be good, and there's definitely stuff going to be happening where we'll get you back in. We'd love to have you back on the podcast. We're coming up to the end of time, so I think we should start wrapping up. And one of the wrap ups that we do is we have a quick fire round at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we start off with some quick fire questions for you. We'll do one, possibly 2 rounds, depending on how long it takes you to answer the questions. But my first question is hip hop lifestyle and business and marketing similarities. What are they? Go, just name me 3 similarities.
I think both people in both communities are born with a relentless element of like self-belief, and they also need external validation. So this summer I went on tour with the Sugar Hill Gang, and backstage I was with CL Smooth, EPMD, all these big artists, and I was like, okay, when all these people started in the 80s, there was no path. They forged their own path. And I see similarities with immigrants that have come to the UK. I see similarities with people that have invested in technologies and companies that are true startups. A true startup being a business where the product and the market have not yet met. That's a startup. Like if you go and launch a law firm and it's in its first 3 months, I don't believe that's a startup, because the supply demand has been established. A startup is a business where the supply demand has not been established. And as you know, in the hip hop lifestyle, there's no demand for what you do until you put it out and you improve it a few times. So one of the greatest things about my day to day at the moment is having really meaningful conversations with big hip hop celebrities about what their business goals are, and then having really incredible conversations with A-list business people about their love for hip hop. The overlap is insane.
Yeah. Interesting. That's really awesome. Okay, go to D. Quick fire question.
Yes. So, oh my God, I've forgotten the question now. Sarah, go. You go first.
Sarah.
Let's have this question.
My question is, if everybody's doing more content using AI, how are people going to stand out? Because more people will be in the space.
It's a phenomenal question. That's one of the best questions I've ever been asked. What happens then is it goes back to the code system that is inbuilt in our heads, which is that we have already a million options. You could have asked that question in 1986, and the answer to that question is today. In 1986, we had 4 channels at home: BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, Channel 4. You could have asked the question, well, what if you can watch every video ever made for free on your phone, plus Netflix, plus Amazon Prime, plus Sky Sports? How will you decide? How will you filter out? And here we are. We just did. We have an incredible instinct for bullshit, and we have an incredible palate and tasteometer that's in our head for content. And there's only 24 hours in a day, and there's only 80 to 90 years in your life if you're hyper lucky. So we tend to naturally prioritize. It's options versus order. You can increase the options, but as humans, we will naturally create an order, and we will go with what works for us. And if you get a sense that something doesn't feel authentic, the same way that last time you got emailed and told to send money to some emerging country, right, in return for Bitcoin, you're like, hang on a second, this isn't quite right. The spelling's not right, and it's dear sir / madam, and madam's got 4 M's in it. That's how you're going to know. And AI will get good. AI will get tricky and sophisticated. But then, whereas the government might not come in and say, hey, listen, we're going to solve the spam issue, and the Gmail providers nor email providers will do that, the government's going to be way more of a participant in making sure that it's humans that live on the land that it governs do not get exploited of the capital that ultimately helps the economy grow, right? So I think there's going to be a natural policing, but it's going to be a big task.
Okay,
Cool.
Interesting.
D.
Often as an entrepreneur, business owner, there are roller coasters, up and downs. So when things are feeling a little bit down, what's your go-to book, podcast for inspiration?
None. I can close my eyes on any given day, and I can see the plastic that covered my wall, that covered my window, with drawing pins into a wooden frame of single glass, no double glazing,
in your original
in my
home.
original home. And I actually put the video out, and it was one of the more popular videos on my Instagram, where last year I went back to Salford and I stood in the garden that I grew up in, which isn't a garden, it's a concrete yard. And I was like, I showed people, I was like, this is where I grew up. That little window is my room where I grew up. So I don't need a podcast. I don't need a book. I don't need anything. Where I came from and the gratitude that I have for the life I live right now is all the content I need. And here's the crazy thing. Talk about every entrepreneur is a content creator. When you have a vision, that's published in your mind, that is content. And memory is content. It might not be audio, image, text. You know what I mean? It might not be any of those things, audio, video, image, text. It could just be a figment inside your imagination, but that is content. So I'm not going to go to a piece of content, which is a podcast or an article or a manifestation or an Instagram account that gives me a boost. And I don't judge anybody that does that. Get your kicks wherever you get them. But for me, the progress that I've made since I started, and also my vision of where I want to go in the future, that an entrepreneur having a vision in their head, the vision is an item of content, is more than enough to keep me motivated. I never, ever thought at much earlier stages in my life that this would be my life. And my life is 1,000 times better than what I post on Instagram. I purposely don't post on Instagram because part of me and part of my insecurity, if I have any, is I just don't want to piss people off and be like, yo, this guy's like crushing. But that's what motivates me is the whole like, yeah, man, I've been very, very extremely lucky. And that's before I go into the fact that, I've got the two of the biggest board members of any business that you can have, which is my mom and dad, that continue to be my biggest cheerleaders, even though they don't necessarily know what I do. Like my mom is a typical Indian mom where I'll be like, Mom, I just got a double page spread in Esquire. And she'll be like, that's nice. Did you sleep properly last night though? Or were you working too hard? This is the kind of stuff that gives me all the motivation that I need. And everyone's like, damn, I didn't have a good day, or damn, I made a mistake. I do that all the time. I could write my book on mistakes would be multiple chapters more than my book on successes. But on balance, I mean, come on, man, this life is beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. And you know what? Thank you for sharing such an insight into you, touching on my friends, your friends, all the events and et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like we could talk to you for hours on end, and we definitely have to invite you back to kind of delve deeper into maybe some of the strands that we've touched on today, especially the AI stuff. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your time with us, bro. I know it means a lot.
This is one of our longest podcasts, Raj.
Yeah, we've done amazing.
We could carry on. But to anyone listening or watching on YouTube, how can people contact you, bro? How do they find out more about you? Where are you?
I mean, if you can spell my name, you'll find me. RajKotecha, or just search for My Friends, Your Friends on Instagram, and I'm tagged in the bio. My bio on my WhatsApp, I believe, is easy to find, tough to catch. I'm a very easy guy to find online. I'm just hard to catch. It's just hard to get the time. But I'm a very easy person to find. And if you do want to get through to me, what I do love more than anything, because my WhatsApp is a war zone and I rarely get a chance to stay on top of it. But if you send me a 1-minute voice note on Instagram, because Instagram cuts off after 1 minute, and you say what you're looking for, if there's any way I can help you, or I can just forward you the Instagram account of somebody I know, or just make an intro, then that would be the best way to get hold of me, for sure.
100%, bro. Thank you so much for taking time out and sharing some amazing insights into your world, into stuff that you've done. This has been the Ultimate Marketing Podcast with myself, Vish. We've got Danita and Sarah Cox, and obviously our most esteemed guest, somebody who I love a lot, Mr. Raj Kotecha. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. We're on all the major platforms, YouTube included, for the video podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.